And of course, like we all know, this magic moment of like we regulate ourselves, we get congruent and vulnerable, and that horse that's galloping around suddenly turns and walks in and is like soft and releasing and connected. So then we get that relational, connected, social engagement moment. The client gets witnessed in it by me, so that amplifies it even further. And so it's this like pendulation. Can we work without ever having to tell the story necessarily? These implicit memories by teaching our body that we're actually in the here and now, and that the horse is this mystical provider of not only connection, but showing really like where are we off in our relational cues, right? So that's the core of the trauma work.
Welcome to the Herd is Calling podcast. This is where we break free from conventional norms to explore the art, science, and wonder of the horse-human connection. I'm Josh Williams, and together with my wife Victoria, we're your hosts. Our mission is to inspire and empower you to improve the lives of horses. Subscribe to the Herd is Calling on Substack for behind-the-scenes stories and unique content. Now, let's get to the episode.
Welcome to the Herd is Calling podcast. We're so happy to introduce our guest today, Cara Giroux. Cara ditched her corporate executive career to become a healer. She aims to use her experiences in trauma and relationships to support others. Cara is a licensed marriage and family therapist who attended one of the few graduate programs in the country to offer a focus on somatic psychology. Cara has advanced training in EMDR, EFT, and relational life couples therapy, and certification in the treatment of child and adolescent anxiety and OCD, hypnosis, and complex trauma. She has previously served as the board chair and president of Seeds of Awareness. Cara guest lectures and graduate studies on somatic techniques in equine-facilitated somatic psychotherapy. She's the author of I Love Your Heart and All Your Feeling Parts, a children's book that gives parents and children a gentle introduction to the theory of parts work. Cara operates a private practice in Marin, California, working with individuals, couples, and children. Her work includes equine-facilitated somatic psychotherapy. Welcome, Cara.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
All right. That is an impressive list of things you do.
Yeah, you're a busy woman.
I am a busy woman.
I just think like what a powerful toolkit you've got.
Yeah, it's fun to have a big kit for sure. Yeah.
Tell us about your horse life these days, including snapshot of a typical day for you with or without horses.
Yeah, sure. My horse life these days is so different than it's ever been. I feel like much of my horse life used to be about accomplishing a certain goal or lessons or a training, goal as the focus. My horse life when I'm not working with clients is really about connection and relationship and play. And so a typical day looks like, so the barn where my horse Sienna is at is right down the street. It's like a 2-minute drive. So I'm there once or twice a day. And it's sort of just checking out where she's at. It's such a joy walking in now because I've had her for 3 years. And when I first got her, she would kind of stand in the back corner of the pen, like, human time sort of thing. I yell her name as I'm kind of like walking down the alley to her paddock, and she's ears perked like, hey, what are we up to today? And so it's playing with that connection. It might be groundwork. It might be riding, it might be trail riding. It's joy, really. Like earlier this week, we were working on some things, but there's no goal anymore except curiosity of like, how far can we get relationally? And what does that do for the way we work and play together? And so, what that means now is giving her some choice. Like we'll ride around the ranch and like these beautiful little moments that like fill my being with joy look like this horse used to really dislike any kind of schooling in the arena. Trail was like, okay, but going into the arena, not okay, like felt like a place of pressure, right? And 3 years in, I dropped the reins. She is turning into the arena versus going onto the back trail on the ranch. And so she's finding joy and preference in that work. And then yesterday I realized that my giggling is the cue for her to halt. Like we'd be cantering and I get this giggle of because she feels so light and so free. And it's just so like joyful that she's like, oh, okay. You know, like that's my cue of like, yes, I did it. Right. Cause that would normally be like, I'd give her a release of like stop or rest. Right. When she really kind of followed through with what my intention was. So it looks really varied, but it's mostly just about joy.
Gosh. Yay.
That's beautiful.
Yay. So what do you owe that transformation to? I hear you saying a lack of expectations, and
Yeah.
that's a large transformation in just a few years.
The transformation of the horse.
Yeah, like you said, she started off kind of like, uh-oh, here's the human, and now
Right.
she's happy to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was both my own self work and then, of course, like supporting her in her own regulation. And so it was super challenging to get a mare that you think based on the sale is a certain way, right? This, I think, common theme. And, you know, the first day I put her in the round pen, she tried to jump the side. It was just like, this pressure is terrifying, right? So it was like, okay, right, we're just going to have to restart from square one. So that was part of it, of initially like letting go of my expectations of what I thought I got in a horse, and realizing although she was broke and trained in certain ways, there was no relaxation or trust in connection. I learned a lot about liberty work in that phase. We did a ton of play and groundwork, and that built a lot of connection and relationship between the two of us on the ground. But then I felt like, okay, after maybe it was like 6 months of that, there's so much external opinions and judgment we get in the horse world, and especially in like bigger barns, and these little comments, and all the trainers I've had, you know, just get on the horse and, you know, all of that. I really had to do battle with my inner critic there about my projection and expectations and frustration of like where we were, like really where we were together, and that I should be riding in a certain way by now. We should be on the trail by now, you know, all of that. I really had to look at that for myself of, okay, like what if we never do? What if I'm never there? What if I'm never comfortable? Is that okay? And so it was a like slow releasing of that, and like a battle with myself about that like wasn't just like a clean release, but like noticing that inner critic, noticing like that voice or that judgment, or noticing a setback of where I perceived my horse to be that day, and getting curious about that. Like, why was that coming up? What was the source of that? What was that judgment or my need there, which was a lot about ego, right? It was a lot of like what was handed to me, a lot of like self-reliance and shoulds, looking at all of that. How we do something, we do everything. So it wasn't like, oh, this is just happening with my horse. It's like the greater should in my life. And so slowly like becoming more aware of that on a nuanced level allowed like more space and presence and joy to be curious in the moment of like what's actually happening with the horse. So an example of that would be like probably a year and a half ago, if I went to take her on trail, and it's like, of course, the process every time you're going on trail, you like, she's barefoot. So you get on the scoop boots and you get on the pack and the whole thing. So this happened a few months back, where we got to the trailhead when there's this nice little rock where you climb on, and she started pacing around the rock, right? She's like moving really quickly, and I'm one that would not like just leap on a horse to get on the trail. If you can't stand, I'm not getting on. And so there's this feel in that moment, she's not standing. When I put all this like effort and energy into the idea of we're going on trail right now, and I caught myself in the moment of, oh, I'm not going to be able to ride on the trail. And I'm imagining my like frustrated walk back with her back to the barn, and maybe my like, I'm going to show you in the round pen feeling, right? Like that whole contraction. And so I was able to catch myself in it with a lot of practice that had led up to that. And so instead of just doing that, of like, okay, let's go back and then you're going to pay kind of vibe, there was this moment of just, I'm on this beautiful trail surrounded by redwoods on this pretty nice rock. Can I sit down for a minute and chill here and just see what happens? Like, what if I just sit here with her? What if we have a walk on the trail today? Because she's a little hot. And so I'm sitting there with no intention, in mind. And she's still kind of like walking around me. I've got like my reins and she's walking around me and I'm taking a few breaths and I'm really calm. It's just going to be what it is today. And she then walked up beside where I was sitting, stood still and started pawing. And I could read. She's like, get on. What are you doing? And so it felt really clear to me. And so I stood up and she still stood. And I got on her and she just wanted to trot up the hill, she was excited about the trail ride. Right. So I think it's in that shift of like, when we stop all the noise, we can actually get curious and meet the horse, right, where they are, which they see and feel. And then they offer so much more of themselves. And then that just keeps happening in layers and layers and layers.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that whole exchange because out of it came something really unexpected too. And it almost sounds like it was just like very simply just a miscommunication.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
could have turned out to be something that could have created a rift either way. Like if you had hopped on while she was running around and kind of had that tension, or like you said, walked back to the barn kind of upset. And so, yeah, that's the stuff. That's the slowing down and making some space for what's in between, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why were you first drawn to horses? How did it all begin for you with horses?
Yeah, I think there was always, so I experienced some complex trauma when I was young, some unfortunately sexual trauma when I was young. And so I think like a refuge for myself were animals, right? And I think that's really common for those of us with trauma, which is most of us, and so any animal when I was younger was a place of refuge for myself. And then I had the opportunity to go trail riding when I was young a few times with a friend's family. And I just remember having like zero fear. It was just like the first horse I got on reared. And I was like, I just kind of held on and was like, okay, like, no problem. They got me a different horse. And then I remember cantering on the trail. And so there was just this immense sense of like freedom, awe, joy, real joy, right? That I had never experienced otherwise. And so I didn't get access to horses in a big way until my 20s, but it was always like that stuck with me of like this sense of joy and freedom with horses.
Just letting that one land for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was just so beautiful. What is somatic therapy? Just in terms of like, I hear you talking about those early experiences, just embodied freedom,
Yes.
wonder,
Yes.
joy. And so now
Yes.
I'm thinking, okay, you're a somatic therapist. What is somatic therapy?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So somatic therapy combines traditional forms of psychotherapy, talk therapy, dream therapy, experiential type therapy, but it centers the body with those in mind, right? So what we know just really in the last couple of decades is that healing doesn't happen when we just look at the explicit, meaning like if we just look at the narrative of what has happened to us, we don't actually heal or shift. It's the implicit that needs to be brought into our knowing, right? Through the self, through the relationship, right? And so you can think of it as like if I were to suddenly toss a soccer ball, right, at you, before you would make sense of why did she just throw that ball at me, right? You would duck, right? Like your body would react to it, right? You might hunch or you might like frown or you might feel something or you might feel the ball hit you and be in freeze in the moment. Our body keeps the score. Our body reacts before we can make cognitive sense of what has happened to us. So consequently, especially in terms of trauma and self-regulation and relationship, somatic psychotherapy helps address the implicit, and whether that's our implicit memory, our implicit felt sense, or often our implicit holding pre-memory.
And so, how did you decide to integrate horses into the therapy that you do?
Yeah. When I was still kind of in my corporate career previously, I had my horse time in my 20s, and I could just see there was really like the young part of me that got to play with the horses. That wasn't explicit to me at the time, but there was that like freedom or sense of wonder or awe that was so important and healing to me. And I had a sense of that, right? And so then when my husband and I were struggling in our marriage 15 years ago or so, we stumbled upon somatic couples therapy, which we did for a long time through an ongoing group. And that introduced me to all of this wild self-awareness and self-understanding and healing that I had no idea was possible, truly, right? One of the couples clients I worked with some time ago had said something to me like, there's a whole book about this, like personalities don't change, right? Like people don't actually change, right? Like he's like, that, right? I was like, no, I don't, because I know my own change and my own shift so radically, right? It was kind of a like hardcore East Coast New Yorker that hated people and became this California psychotherapist, right? So there was something for me in the horses and then my own somatic psychotherapy. I knew that there was some magic there. And at the time, there was not such a thing as somatic equine facilitated psychotherapy. So it's like, I need to sort this out and put this together. And so when I considered a career change, my intent, in my application was like, I know that the way horses demand congruency from us is related to what is healing in somatic psychotherapy. So it was always a goal of mine to bring that into my work. But then when I was in practicum, or later my internship, actually, I had an amazing supervisor who had a lot of trust with me. And I was working with some children at the time, and things were a little bit like stuck and challenging. And so I said to my supervisor, like, hey, I'm thinking about like, what if I worked with my horse with this kiddo, right? And she's like, yeah, go for it. So we like met on the trail in this kind of beautiful forest that's close by. And I started exploring like, how can I bring movement and gesture and relational connection and awareness into the therapy with this child? And it was magic. It was like immediately so clear how it shifted the here and now focus, the relationship, how the horse was at the center and bringing her healing. There was just so much going on that immediately I was like, okay, right, there's so much here. So that was the beginning.
It's a big jump that you made. When I introduced you in your bio, you said that you had ditched your corporate executive career to become a healer. We heard you say that you went and had some special experiences working with the somatic therapy on those retreats with your husband.
Yeah.
Were there some other formidable forks in that road? I mean, that's a huge pivot. Like, we know a little more about your backstory than the audience does, but you're working in some pretty major fields and a pretty major business. And I don't know if we could just maybe explore that intersection a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think for me, it was really like, I look at the law of attraction like now and had been reading about it again recently. And someone was saying something it's like, it's not focusing on what you desire, it's actually focusing on what you expect to happen, right? Like this expectation of like what will happen. And so that recently hit me of like, oh, right, like my survival mechanism, the way I could tolerate the trauma from my childhood was this expectation and, absolute belief that not only would I get out of there, but I would do exceptionally well, right? Like, it was like, that was my coping mechanism, thank goodness of like that faith in myself and almost like the universe of like, I will get out, right? And so that expectation led to this corporate career in commercial real estate, where I worked really hard and ended up, I was in my early 30s or maybe 30 and had gotten a job offer at Apple to co-lead their North America real estate for their stores. It was sort of like at that time, like 15 years ago. So it was that Apple was like it, right? So there wasn't a better job, right, I could have taken. And so I said yes, and I started that job and was immediately in this culture that was just wildly like emotionally and relationally confusing, like hostile, competitive. It was mind blowing, like the way the team was working. And so I was just so truly confused. I would walk around and talk to some of the team members like, why are you here? Like, you're so smart. Why are you here? And they would say things like, it becomes addictive, or just wait 6 months for your golden handcuffs, or, that kind of feedback. But I'm looking at some of the people who have gray skin and, just look like ill. And so it was this moment of a choice of, wow, right? Like I could see if I just stayed a bit longer, how it would be so hard to leave. Like you're just kind of sunk in this environment and in this income and all of the things. And so it was time to get very real with myself of like, is the income, is the job, is the title my safety now? Is that actually like making me safe? Will I sacrifice myself, my body, my wellness for this career that's only going to take me often to places like this with this level of stress and the travel away from my kids and all of the things? And so it was hard. My base survival self, the part of me that had that hardcore expectation of like, this is how you get safe in the world, right? You become wildly successful, was so vulnerable and threatened by the idea of walking away from that. It was like a trying couple of weeks, and we ended up taking it was like a pre-planned family vacation. So I had a week away where I could just kind of see it, like really see what it was. And so luckily, my husband was really supportive when I was like, I have to quit. I need to leave, and I need to and I think I want to become a therapist. And he's like, okay, that's a different path, right? Okay, let's look at that. Let's figure out what that looks like for us as a family and otherwise. And I still remember my little like victory drive. I was living in San Francisco at the time. So I went over the weekend up to Apple, and I had my computer. I had like a flowery little butterfly post-it note, and I wrote on the post-it note, please consider this my formal resignation. Put it on the laptop and like put it on the desk of my boss. And it was just like this message of like, no, right? I'm actually not gonna be trapped in this. There's like a different transformation for me.
Wow. What a story.
Yeah, it's really a powerful story because, like you shared, your original inclination to push you out into the world to escape being trapped in what sounded like a very difficult situation that you were growing up in propelled you to this level of success in the traditional sense of the word. But then, I mean, that's a place a lot of folks get comfortable. Like you use the term golden handcuffs, and especially at that level. And I can only imagine the vibe there. I mean, I'm like a simple Oregon country kid, but I remember when like the iPhone came out and like Steve Jobs, I mean, that was a really big vibe going on. It was just major to just be on that campus. I have friends down there, and I know how hard it is to get a job there too. Like it's a very special place to get a job. But then to revisit, it's like that hero's journey, right? That we've talked about before, where you have to dive below the surface of the known comfortable world. And I think, at least for myself, sometimes I think, well, you do the journey once and then you're good.
Yeah, right. Can it be like that? That would be really
that would be nice. Yeah. But in yours, it circled back around, and it was almost the same decision, different circumstances, but similar and just as explosive in many ways too, as far as like what it was going to do to change. So yeah, I just think it's fascinating, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I feel like that lesson for myself. Like I'll say with clients a lot, your super skill will show you your shadow, right? If you look at where you're exceptional, where you're overskilled in some way, whether it's like extremely self-reliant or super calm in a crisis or whatever that is, that skill was probably developed based on your early environment, like really wisely developed, but probably you had to exile some part of yourself in order to build that skill. So that incredibly hardworking, super focused, super self-reliant self that I developed, I had to exile, right? Like need, vulnerability, feeling my own exhaustion, feeling the need for connection from others. Could go on, right? But those are like some of the layers of like, I don't need that, right? I'm like not a person who likes people. I'm not, right? I don't need it. Is what we believe ultimately to be our personality. But I think for all of us, right, it's that exiling. I think it's just incredibly vulnerable for us, and horses are such a unique path in this of looking at like, well, what are those exiled, where am I like overdeveloped, and how am I bringing that forward in my connection and relationship with the horse, and where are these like vulnerable parts that really don't get my attention, and can I be safe in bringing those forward?
And correct me if I'm mistaken, but just because we got to work with you a little bit before, some of what
Yeah.
you're referring there to and the language you're using is from parts theory.
Yeah, exactly. Internal family systems.
Internal, okay.
And Fisher's taken that in a different somatic lens, but really both worlds. Yeah.
So what I am wondering, actually asking for a friend, like how do you like that's requires, like you said, vulnerability, which is courage, but it also is like you have to really know yourself. There's like a moment where you have to be able to say, no, that's not who I am actually.
Uh-huh.
And that to me is very difficult. And I'm just curious, was there a moment you just knew? Was it a process?
Mhm.
What gave you that, I know this is not the path for me, besides just, kind of seeing people were not well and it was uncomfortable, but there had to have been some kind of inner knowing that you tapped into too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was also like part self-preservation, the way those like teams worked, and when I like inquired with other team members, like what is happening right now. I was trying to make sense of, there was like my co-lead at the time was like really getting hammered by our boss. So when I was inquiring into that, they were kind of like, well, yeah, like you'll see they break everybody down at different points and that sort of thing. And so there was this knowing of like, this is going to be me at some point, and how am I going to handle, like how would I handle that, what do I want to do? And it's sort of like, I know I could handle it. It's not that I like, I'm tough, I could get through it, but it was sort of like, why? Like
Right.
why, what, yeah, why, like just for money, like just for like I can be an industry like leader, is that really like freedom for me? Or like it just felt like such a trap that I would not, it's like the rope is like right there and I'm about to step into it and then just be in that trap, to the point where I don't question. I think I kept asking other people so much, why are you here? Because I wanted to know if I would be able to leave. And it felt pretty clear if I stayed, I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah. Circling back to the horses,
Mhm.
I mean, even when you were talking about the culture in your work, I'm thinking about the culture in a lot of horse barns or horse training
Yeah.
programs. I'm starting to see like, oh, okay, there's Cara's been on this arc here that everything is sort of lining up in terms of your shifts in your life, your career, your life, and your horse. So can you walk us through what a session with a psychotherapy session with horses looks like?
Yeah, sure. I think the first part to hold is that the horses are centered, in my view, in every way. So a lot of types of equine facilitated work can often use the horse as like object of projection, as tool sort of thing. But primarily the horse is a sentient and really gifted healing being, and that I'm more there to support that relational work between the client and the horse. I'm sort of guide, I'm holding safety, I'm supporting the client in regulation. My goal is to watch and witness and help the client understand what is happening with the horse. So it looks different for every client. But at the core, even before we approach a paddock, we're actively working on regulation tools. The client will get an overview of, depending on their horse knowledge, or even if they have horse knowledge, like their understanding of herd dynamics and how a horse feels like safe and seen and connected with and understood, like how horses release, what to watch for, how we get to start to know the horse. And so we'll work on some very simple like orienting or breathing or like one of the million down regulation tools that we might use. But what's interesting, especially with working with children, is that instead of it just being like, oh, let's like sit in an office, the motivation is external. We're going to help the horse to be calm and to connect with us. So we're going to work on this breathing because the horse is going to understand what is happening in our bodies, and here's why, right? And then we'll enter the paddock. And then we get really curious about just the most subtle and nuanced reactions of the horse. Like, when are they showing us calming signals? When is the horse looking away? Can you notice the chin wobble there? Oh, like the horse wants to release. Can we step back, right? And so all of that time, even in just that like introductory session, we're working on, to me, what are really core implicit regulation techniques. We're learning about interoception, right? If we're thinking about polyvagal theory, that's what am I feeling in my body? Is there tension right now? Can I be aware of that tension? Can I ground? If we're interacting with the horse and the horse becomes tense, that's of course our cue to get curious around our own, tension. We're working on proprioception, right? So like, where's my body in space right now? I might not be aware that I'm getting pretty big, or I'm pacing, or I'm fidgeting, but the horse is aware of that and reacting to that, building awareness of that. We're working on neuroception, right? Which is, what is my perception of threat and safety right now? Because that is going to impact if the horse feels safe and okay. And so can I notice if there's tension in my body? I might feel intimidated or nervous or anxious right now. And what do we need to do about that? So that's kind of the foundation piece with children and or adults that I'm working with. And then when we're looking at trauma work, I'm bringing in a lot of sensory motor work and gestures, right? So when we think about our core attachments, there were some really early gestures that we made with caregivers, right? Whether it be like the reaching out and reaching up, like pick me up right now, or the like pushing away, like, no, I don't want breakfast right now, or I don't want whatever. For each of us, depending on our own capacity, there were like certain reactions to those gestures that we made. In some families, for some children, there would be a really big reaction if you hit the spoon away, or if you said no, or like hit any of those things. And those really big reactions to a very little human feel incredibly frightening, right? And we developed coping mechanisms, even in infancy, to make sure that we preserved connection in relationship. So that might mean we shut down that push away, or that it wasn't safe to reach out and need, like it was better if we were quiet, sort of thing, right? And so all of us have these kind of very core attachment patterns and gestures. If we have a trauma history, were impacted for us, and unbeknownst to us will cause dysregulation in that movement. And so what that looks like over time with a client is introducing them into groundwork or liberty work with a horse, where we are really slowly pushing away and asking for a boundary, or asking the horse to come in. And inevitably those gestures, when done with awareness, are causing dysregulation in the client when we hit that trauma point. And then, of course, dysregulation in the horse. We're using the horse as that metric again of like, oh, the horse, is bothered by something that's happening with us. So how do we pendulate and go back to regulation in the moment using these tools we've already kind of really built up? The horse is bringing us into the here and now moment, right? Because if there's a big 1,000-pound animal galloping around us in the round pen, that's going to bring you into the present. Trauma brings us into the past, right? So that's where we get really stuck in psychotherapy, is the trauma memory comes up and we're suddenly living in that past moment. So we're here helping, to support the client is regulating. And then, of course, like we all know, this magic moment of like we regulate ourselves, we get congruent and vulnerable, and that horse that's galloping around suddenly like turns and walks in and is like soft and releasing and connected, right? And so then we get that relational, connected, social engagement moment. The client gets witnessed in it by me, right, as well. So that amplifies it even further. And then once we ground again, we go for it again if it's called for, right? And so it's this like pendulation of, can we work without ever having to tell the story necessarily, these implicit memories, by teaching our body that we're actually in the here and now, right? And that the horse is this mystical provider, right, of not only connection but showing really like where are we off, right, in our relational cues, right? So that's the core of the trauma work. Anxiety looks a bit different. We also kind of access that, it's more psychoeducatively based, but there's also all this like holding in the body. So there's more parts work involved and more kind of, it can be play with the horse. Yeah. So I could go on and on, but that's the core.
Yeah, that is so cool. That is so cool. I had, and I don't know if this is okay to talk about, so like we can edit it out, but I thought I'd just talk a little bit about my
I think it's
experience.
great.
Okay, great. I had the opportunity to work with you and my horse Ezra. You came and visited us for a weekend, and we kind of did some somatic stuff here at our place. And under your careful guidance, I was blown away by the things that were happening. It's something about the body informing the whole thing, my body informing the whole thing, that I wasn't prepared for. Like in my mind, I kind of knew what we were going to do. But there's something of having the experience grounded in your own body, and so much of the work that I think we all have to do is, working that trauma through our body, sort of trying to get that trauma to metabolize out our body. And then, so I was just kind of blown away by that. I was kind of just like watching myself going, I did not see that coming in terms of some of the kind of epiphanies I was having and things I was noticing. But the other thing that I really valued was the experience between my horse and me. And it was just a way of relating to him in a way that was so raw and so real. It was a gift you gave me with him. It was really just a moment where I realized how much he carries for me. I even get a little verklempt just thinking about it, because it was just this, when you said earlier, mystical beings that horses are. I just thought, oh my gosh, here this horse who knows my story without me ever having to tell it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
And then the realization that I ask him to hold that for me in the work that we do, and sometimes don't offer him the space to release it. That was a big one for me, and I'm still kind of working that one out. So thank you, because, as somebody who's been doing horses pretty much my whole life, you offered me through that work that we did together another lens that surprised me and that was really special.
Oh,
So
beautiful. Yeah, to hear the reflections and like to think back to Ezra's like, like epic presence, right? Of like the way he, right? Like, yeah, you couldn't script, right? Like his like wild moves and like the whole dance, right? And not only that, but like I'm remembering like those dramatic shifts of like when you shifted, how it's so surreal, really. It's hard to describe those moments of like being in that like that struggle, that uncovering, that, you know, stuckness, and then getting to a place of like understanding or integrating or like shifting in the body or heart space. And the horse is just, you know, like right there, right in that relational contact, you know, and connection. And that, let's see, I think I hear in what you're saying, like there, tell me if I'm getting it right, like there's almost like some kind of like guilt, or like you're holding, you know, like holding all of this for me, and this like, God, I'm so awful, like you're, you know, having to like hold this. But I also like want to offer that I think it's less that they're like, my sense of it is like, it's less that these like magical beings are like frustrated by it or annoyed, but it's like the magical moments of like our knowing, and they're really actively, like Ezra was snorting and snorting for like an inordinate, like it's just a wild amount of time that almost became ridiculous.
Yes.
But that it's like they're just kind of patiently waiting, right? Like faithfully holding with the like, okay, when you're ready, right? Like we can let this go together, right? I can help you in this, right? So it gets to be that of like, what if it's actually like a noble holding of those kind of exiled parts, right? And the like, whew, is the release of like, you get to be there when you're there, not like there's some, you know, like you're this burden on these beings.
Right. Yeah. No, that's amazing and helpful. And yeah, I mean there's always just the inclination for me to go to guilt, of course, because I'm just always wanting to, you know, again, be really good and do the right thing and not be a burden and all of the things. But I agree, there was a part of that where it was more like gratitude. It was just like this immense, like, oh
Mhm.
my God. And not guilt, but the reconciling of, whoa, I never noticed how much you are actually holding for me.
Yeah.
And now that I see it, I can't unsee it.
Yeah.
So, and that's a lot. Also, like as he's snorting and sneezing and blowing out for like 5, 6 straight minutes, it's like, good
Yeah.
job. Thank you.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Apparently I'm a lot, but it was really amazing. And yeah, it just gave me just this like immense gratitude and more awe for the horses, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. 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 So that was my story.
Yeah, thanks for going and sharing that.
Hey friends, Josh here. We've launched a free community for The Herd is Calling. It's on Substack. Subscribe to join thoughtful discussions and access exclusive content. It's as easy to use as social media, but so much better because social media. Am I right? In the words of John Lennon, a dream you dream alone is only a dream, but a dream you dream together is reality. Like the wisdom of the herd, we are stronger together. Click the link nearby to subscribe and get in on the conversation. Now, back to the pod.
I wonder, Cara, like you know, this concept of horses as mirrors that's often talked about in
Yeah.
therapeutic settings. That's a very nuanced and interesting topic. I feel like you,
Yeah.
with your work and somatics and family systems and parts work, are uniquely positioned to shed some light on some of the nuances of that, you know, where it might be true and where it's maybe not the whole story, or
Yeah.
where it might not be true at all. Where's that intersection of, you know, projection versus mirroring, or is there better language maybe that we could use around that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a great inquiry and curiosity, because it's right. It's like, I think on the surface level, it can make the horse the object of like, oh, you're just like this mirror, this object to my feelings and emotions. And yeah, it's like that literal object of a mirror. So much more nuanced than that, because there is this sentient being who is relational with us, and is not an object, but is has their own like will and desire and like feelings that day about how they slept. Not that they're thinking of it in those terms, right? But like have their own experience and wants. And so the mirror is possible and can like work if we don't think of it as this is just an object reflecting something back at me. I think the mirror aspect is useful in thinking of, well, like what I'm offering to this horse relationally is probably what I'm offering in most relationships, right? Like probably where I'm stuck in most relationships, probably. So it's like the mirror to the self there, the mirror potentially again to back to like the interoception. It's like it can be the mirror to my felt sense, to my holdings, to my blocks, to my unawareness of like where I am in space, and to my unawareness of perhaps like how I am in connection with others. But again, like centering the horse, it's also this core of like the here and now with this horse relationally in that moment, right? And so, yeah, I sort of reject it as like in a stance of horse as object. And then I think in the way anyone relationally with us, like if you think of yourself as a parent or you think of yourself as a partner to someone, there is a mirror in that relationship to the parts of yourself. And of course, the other is not an object that is like just that mirror. There's a whole dynamic and dance in that very particular relationship.
Yeah, beautiful. You're such a great teacher. I really appreciate how you explain things.
Mhm.
You really paint a vivid picture while also explaining really complex, deep topics. So I think that's
Oh,
a gift of yours.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Something I heard you say when you were talking about you're doing in equine guided therapy is just explaining what I hear is some very fundamental relational horsemanship skills, emphasis on relational there. And it sounds like a lot of these therapeutic results come out of that just sense of awareness, empathy.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you could help us name some of those and just parse some of that out a little bit too,
Sure.
because there's so many consilient threads there. And I'm a little curious, especially as we're trying to help guide people from more the horsemanship perspective.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think I had shared earlier that early draw to animals that I had. And, you know, when I think about people I know at barns, right, like horse people are typically drawn to all animals. I have made up a story that can be due to a safe haven around trauma experiences, right? That, like, in particular, humans are drawn to horses in that way. When I think about when we look at advances in horse training and conscious horse training and working with horses now, Victoria, I think you have a sweatshirt that says like y'all need groundwork.
Mhm.
I love that sweatshirt because I think it's right. We know the place to build relationship, connection, awareness is on the ground with horses. And so that's wonderful. And then also super challenging because what we just talked about of when you think about really basic groundwork at its core, you might have a horse on a lead rope and the first thing you might be asking for is some level of space or distance from each other, right? So that's going to look like backing that horse up usually, and backing the horse up is going to look like some kind of like pushing out and getting bigger, right? To like claim space. So if you were in a young family situation where pushing anybody back or getting bigger got you in trouble, you would have learned unconsciously that when you had the urge, when someone was in your space and you had the urge to get bigger and push them back, that you would, for example, so if I think about like someone in my space and like getting bigger, I kind of like feel this, I might rise up in my chest. I might want my arm to go out. I might have my face get kind of tight, sort of thing. And so if that were my impulse when I were young and someone were in my space, I would have had to learn to contract that getting bigger, to like actually tense those muscles, to hold my arm in, maybe clench, like I'm trying to imagine I'm like clenching my throat and I'm kind of like keeping my head down, right? And so I would have done that 1,000 times until it was so automatic that I didn't know I was even doing it. So it became numb in a way. Like if someone's in my space, you just do this thing. You can think of it like you're driving somewhere and you don't have to think about the left turn anymore. Eventually your body knows to do that because that's the way to school. You don't think about it anymore, right? So the brain literally takes over. Okay, so then fast forward and you're in your 40s and you're trying to enjoy your horse, and the horse is in your space there. And your instructor says, back her up out of your space. And you go to do that, but your body is actually numb in those ways. You're in a bit of like what we would call freeze state. So if you think of, most people are familiar with like the window of tolerance, right? So the window of tolerance, if you imagine these like two lines here, are sort of like the emotional states in which we find regulation and comfort, where we're not in either freeze down here or up above here, fight or flight, right? So when I think of like this particular client and she's trying to back up the horse, she's down here in freeze. In that moment, right? Of like, I don't know how to, like, I literally don't know how to do that. I don't know how to use my body in that way. And so a lot of instructors might be like, get big, get, sort of thing. Okay. So then when this client comes out of that, it's not that we come out of freeze, for example, and we're just in our window of tolerance, like, oh, this is so relaxing and regulating. Yes, I'm just going to move the horse right now.
Right.
We actually ping pong out of trauma. So if somebody kicks us out of the freeze, and horses do this too, you're going to go whoop up here into fight flight. So, if I don't know how to back someone up out of my space, then what's going to happen is if I get enough stimulus where I actually have to move, I'm going to move really erratically or really in a big way. And then if I get there, the horse is going to probably flip out, right? Because I went from freeze to explosion, and that's terrifying to the horse, right? So it's not going to, and the horse might pull back, and it's like, oh wow, that didn't work, right? And it just feels like, and then the client might go from here back to freeze sort of thing, right? So again, these like what seem like simple movements in groundwork are actually like really core sensory motor patterns that bring up a lot in our body. So Josh, to your question of like, okay, well, as an instructor, like how do I, if I see this, which I probably see all the time, how do I support clients with that? And so it's really like, how do we slow down and create safety? At first, it's like, how do I just create more safety and support this student in this situation, right? Like what's optimal safety look like? Do they need to practice with me, the instructor, and not a horse at first? What does it look like if they're just pushing me back? How can they practice those movements and feel a little bit of resistance from me, maybe like until I feel them actually get congruent and a little bit big? I'm gonna be the horse that won't get out of their space. And then how do I allow them some wins in that, right? Like, oh, I felt you a little bigger there. I'm going to step back. And so we're going to go slowly so that we're not ping ponging up and down, but you can take some risks to come out of freeze with me and have some success and go really slowly, right? And so then it might be like, okay, once that feels okay, and we've done a little bit work there, it might be that I'm standing as the horse instructor either beside or behind the client, and we're going to back the horse up together. I'm going to start out slow and I'm going to push back with you, and we'll use some of my energy to even just get a lean back at first, or know that if the horse really comes in, I'm going to use my big energy to get them back to a safe place while you like work on that. So I think it like in so much of traditional horse training, it's just about like, go, like getting that energy, which actually doesn't help us because we're just doing, that thing. And so it's just awareness of like those gestures are inherently dysregulating for so many people. And so if there's a problem, it's like just really slowing that area down to support regulation for the person so that we can support the horse.
Yeah, great. No, that's very helpful.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, there's so many, to us, just seems like blind spots for people. And I hear a lot of what you're saying there. And, we talk a lot about the scale of pressure. and how it's very important to start at zero and work incrementally up the scale. When you talked about the window of tolerance, I was thinking, oh, okay, that's why that works so well, because that
Yeah.
is helping guide people through the window of tolerance. Because typically, yeah, you see people could jump from a 0 to an 8. It's just a standard practice. You're
Yeah.
not at all aware that they're jumping from 0 to
Yeah.
8. So
Yeah, exactly. And then that's the part of polyvagal theory, right? Where we actually don't, because of our trauma, we don't have interoception. We don't have a felt sense of like what is happening in the tension or of our body. And we don't have proprioception of like, oh, I just went from 3 to 7 right there. Like literally don't. And so that, yeah, holding that like anyone reflecting that slowness to someone and helping them to scale is actually like without ever having to do trauma work is helping the body create like here and now new experiences of safety that are so healing.
yeah, awesome.
Immensely helpful. Yeah. So Cara, what do you think the ripple effect of this kind of work is in the world and the horse world, everywhere?
Yeah. Gosh, it's such a big, wild question. I think it's so much, right? Because what we're talking about is like broken connection and love and relationship, right? At its core. I think it's like the spiritual level of even like the mystical work that horses are offering us if we really see it, right? Like if we can really take in the magic of that and receive it, and then the healing part, I feel like for each individual, like whether it's real, it could be through psychotherapy, the impact to an individual healing trauma. It can also just be for someone who comes for a pony ride and meets a horse and actually feels awe. Like I'm imagining every child I've ever seen that comes and like grooms a horse for the first time does it in this way that has nothing to do with actually grooming, in terms of getting the horse clean, but it's like this magic of, whoa, slowly brushing this horse and touching the fur and those experiences. So I feel like in every way that anyone who is involved in consciously working with horses, there is just infinite ripple in the way we reconnect with ourselves, firstly, of like our whole selves and being in congruency and connection with the horse. And then this way that inevitably builds awareness in our world to others, right? If you're in congruency in your horse relationship, it's going to shift the way you show up. So yeah, I think in any place where we're doing deep healing work, what is that? There's like a certain number, it was like monkeys, and that there was a certain number of like monkeys that have to learn a new skill before like all of them know this like skill and cause a shift. Do you guys know this story?
No.
Okay. So there's some kind of research project about that of like, well, what's the number of mammals that have to have a shift before like the shift just
right.
everywhere, right? So if we think of that around consciousness, like this is to me consciousness work and spiritual work. And so we get to impact and support that level of shift, hopefully for our planet, right? And consciousness.
Amazing.
Yeah. So how many? Like we
we need a number.
Accelerate.
There is one. There's like an actual, percentage. We can look that up.
We'll be doing some Googling after we finish here. But no, I love that. That's the ripple effect. That's the consciousness raising that we're all in this for, that it's a journey and we're on it together. So
yeah, I love that too, because of the network effect of collaboration and working together, just these kind of conversations and recording it and broadcasting it, it helps move that number. It helps move that percentage at a greater rate than if we were just isolated in our little pockets. Still probably having a profound impact on the few people you get to interact with face to face, but by sharing this, I think it helps spread the ripples a little farther, hopefully.
Yeah.
Have you figured out what your deepest intention with horses is?
I figured that out actually through the two of you, through your course you had I think it's a 7-layer dip exercise.
Yeah.
It was super interesting to kind of dig, into that. I think that my why at the bottom there, my deepest intention was freedom, which to me meant like healing and wholeness, like that level of freedom, the ability to be. And I like, this is my wish for all of us. My deepest wish is like the safety and ability to be and reclaim our whole selves. I know that horses can give us that.
Wow. Yeah, because as you were saying that, I was just thinking, well, that's exactly the work you're doing for other people.
Yeah.
And that's something we're always noticing, like with this work with horses, like when you come to them with that, how can I help you? Or maybe it's a body work, or maybe it's just not having an agenda. There's this, like, it opens up this thing, and what is it about like giving the thing that you want that
Mhm.
makes it real? I mean, is that embodiment? Like what do you
Mm,
think that is?
mm. Yeah, giving the thing that they want that makes it real. It's a great inquiry. It looks like showing up authentically. It looks like not hiding behind either the ego agenda or the want or the defense or the projection in the moment. And so actually showing up in the way like the horse is wanting us to really means you have to bring your whole vulnerable, curious, playful, empathetic self. You have to attune and you have to be self-aware. There's no other choice. And so if you're actually doing that and then you have to drop all that other stuff, it naturally, I think, brings embodiment. It naturally brings implicit movement and healing and presence.
Yeah.
So are those some of the things that horses have taught you about yourself?
Yeah, I think for sure. It keeps getting deeper and more nuanced, I think is the interesting part. Like it doesn't feel done, but it's like, yeah, the layers, like I was describing earlier, like the giggling joy and like things that were so foreign to me for so long outside of certain contexts, right? Like that might be like okay with kids or playing in some way or mothering, but like I don't walk around giggling, right? Like that wasn't okay for a long time. That was like part of the exiled. So yeah, I do feel like it's like it asks a balance of me, right? Where my skills, my super skills, my expectations, my drivenness, all of those things that were overdeveloped or were wonderful coping mechanisms that I needed at the time, those have to take a step back, right? Like those parts of me have to not lead the way that they're used to. And the other parts of me have to feel safe in coming forward, right? And then so when that happens, if we're thinking like the parts work lens, then all the presence, the empathy, the awareness, the curiosity and play get to happen on a big and bigger level.
Wow, that's fascinating. I've got so many thoughts swirling. That's a little off script, but I might just go there for a second. As somebody in the healing arts profession, that concept of, showing up,
Mhm.
like we just talked about how healing that actually is to
Yeah.
like give. But then there's this paradox of giving too much or
Yeah.
feeling exhausted, taking
Yeah.
on. How do you thread that needle? I was even just thinking, like, as you were talking, when you sink into that relational zone, it's almost like that's a protective bubble. Like you can
Mhm.
almost, and then I just thought of like Mother Teresa. I'm like, well, she wasn't struggling with boundaries or over serving, like she was just giving, but seemed like more fulfilled the more she gave. I know
Mhm.
me, like working in body work, I had a limit. What is that magical zone that keeps it fresh, that like keeps it limitless? It's
Mhm.
almost like if it's not, then we're giving, but it's not coming back, or
Yeah.
we're not tapping into this infinite zone. Is that anything you've thought of just as a healer, and maybe even share like what you would recommend to people to do to recharge, to reconnect if you are going there? Because like we're not walking around like living saints, most of us.
No, not
How
at
do you
all.
stay fresh and serve?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. I think it's really interesting as women we're handed a certain like model of that, especially as well. For me, I've had to learn to hold that inquiry of like where is my giving coming from? So if my giving is coming from placating. If my giving is coming from my boundary would make me anxious, or like, what would this person like think of me? Or, right. Or as a healer, if my giving is coming from, I think I need to save this person, or they will not be okay without me, or like those sorts of things, then that's a place to get really curious, right? Because that's an old coping pattern that we have there, especially as healers or teachers or like those types of roles. Can we deeply trust the path of our fellow human, right? That we actually can't control it, don't need to, that there is a path that is bigger than us than we could possibly imagine, right? And so it's sort of like, what is my big yes? What does that look like when it's an authentic big yes? And then what does it look like when I'm in joy in my healing arts? What practices, what types of people, like getting super clear about, I think that comes from a feeling of like scarcity of like, well, I have to fill my practice, or I have to, I should like work with whomever in this way. And I think the truth is our magic is like in these certain areas, and we know it when we're in it. We kind of know it wildly when we're in it, right? Like we can be in a flow state when we're really in that like playing field, and other things just feel kind of draining. So it doesn't mean that nothing in our work might feel draining, but is the balance in a place like where I feel excitement and joy? And if it's not, right, like, well, where's my curiosity of like, probably there's a really old coping mechanism like driving where I am right now. And then back to that law of attraction, sort of thing of like, well, what is my expectation? Like, is my expectation that I have to work until I'm like exhausted? Is my expectation that I will have like this manifestation of this work for myself, right? If it's not what's in my way, can I actually like look at that?
That's helpful.
Big stuff.
Yeah. I'm going to be re-listening to this one. Again, asking for a friend. We just have a few more questions before we finish up. But before we get to those, do you have any projects that you want to share? How can people get in touch with you? How can people see your content and just be involved with all things Cara that are in the world?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. So my website is somatictherapymarin.com. And so in California, the two areas of my psychotherapy work that I focus on are the equine work that we've talked about. And then I also do couples intensive work. So it's short-term, very focused couples therapy that often starts with a 2-day on-site intensive and then another 10 hours of work. And the expectation there is, we sort of dive very deep the first 10 hours over 2 days so that you basically can't leave and not see your patterns and want some change to happen. And then we kind of fine tune for the next 10 hours over some months. So I do that as psychotherapy. I also do that for those who aren't looking at a trauma piece there. I do that on a coaching relationship perspective as well. So you don't have to be in California to come. And then I have been offering some workshops for therapists and equine facilitators where we're looking at the somatic work real time, and they get to experience how to, everyone from what you're both asking about of like, I work with people and I see them stuck in these ways. Like, what do I do in these moments, right? Of how to shift things for them up to, psychotherapists who are interested in eventually incorporating equine work within their practice. So those workshops, when they happen, are listed on my website. And then lastly, the children's book that I've written is available on Amazon. And that's a very short story for young kids that is a really gentle introduction to parts work, right? So that it's not a big making sense of, but it's just an intro of like, we have these different parts of ourselves that we're not aware of, and they sometimes take over, and we can know, right? Like when our sad part or when our angry part is taking over, that's not the whole of us. So if we're like smashing our plate or doing whatever, we can start to see that, oh, like our angry part got really big and had a lot to say. And what do we want to understand about that? And so I think that's really helpful for parents too, and giving language and supporting their kids, especially around anxiety, which has been on such of a rise, unfortunately. Of like the worry part and the angry part are usually best friends in kids. And so, how do parents start to see that and look at that from an early age and help their children see that?
Wow, powerful. What was that movie? That was like a Pixar film.
Outside In, is that right?
Yeah. I was just imagining like myself reading that book, and I would be like having all kinds of aha moments and light bulbs. Your children's book, because when I watched that movie too, it was like, oh, this is amazing. This makes so much sense. I felt like I had a deeper understanding of myself. So I think it really is a gift you're giving families, like obviously it's a children's book, but it might be the first time some adults are hearing some of this language and thoughts, and it doesn't make so much sense, when it's like, oh, duh, yeah, that makes so much sense. So I'm glad you're doing that. And the intensive, I haven't had the gift of a lot of therapy in my life. I've had some experiences, but I'm always like, I just want to like sit down and dig into this. I just want to figure this out. And I feel like that's what you're providing for people. It's like, we're going to sit in this room and we're not going to leave till we figure it out. And what a powerful process, and what a gift too. So
yeah, it is. It's really intimate, powerful. And it doesn't look like, 10 hours of talking. It's a lot of like, and I know you're making a joke, Josh, but it's like, it's a lot of experiential and movement and, art and different ways of like, like, how do we really show up for this and like do a deep dive? But that level of, it's such a rare thing to have that level of like, of depth of dropping in on such an intimate level. And talk about a mirror, we can't hide, right? In our long-term partnership, our stuff is gonna show up. There's beauty in that. There's great opportunity and potential for healing when we really look at it.
Yeah. And it sounds like you create a very nurturing environment to do that in. I love how you're always just talking about play and curiosity. The first place I go is just like self-judgment. So like, let's just be curious about that. And I love that. I mean, that curiosity is a superpower for working with horses. And I think it really extends to literally everything.
It does.
Yeah. And I'll make sure all that's linked down below. So if
thanks.
anybody has a child watching, they need to order the book instantly and keep track of everything Cara's doing on your website.
I could just keep going with you, Cara. This is what happens every time. We just keep rolling, but we'll start to rein it in, pun intended.
Yeah.
If you could tell people just 3 things, distill down what's important or meaningful about horses for you in just 3 things, what would they be?
3 things. I think number 1 would be the portal to the mystical and the spiritual, that potential of actually like slowing down and taking in what it is to be with something as wild as a horse. I mean, it's just so unbelievable that they even exist and then will offer us anything that they offer us. And so that piece feels like number 1. Yeah. The second is taking in the potential for healing. It can look as simple as that here and now moment of presence, of just like driving by a field of horses and pulling over and being present with the joy of that, of their beauty or that moment, to me is healing, all the way up to very nuanced, connected relationship that restores our own being and freedom and health. So the nuance of healing. And third, I mean, it's something around like joy and play, really so missing for all of us. And there is something like that energy that comes out at any age. There was this morning, there was like a infant. It felt like, I don't even think she could walk, but she was like old enough to scream and point. I was like leading my daughter on my mare to have a ride in the arena, and she saw a little girl on a horse and like pointed and screamed with this joyful vision of that. And so that potential, right, for that reclaiming of joy.
Gosh, those are good ones. Thank you for sharing. When it comes to horses, someone or something you feel gratitude for?
I feel gratitude for the two of you. I feel like what's wonderful is that there's so many now, like in the online world, right? Like there's so much progressive work, conscious work
Yeah.
that's coming forth, you know, and also I feel like there's something in the special magic that you two offer. I can't like capture the whole piece, but what's been different to me about what you're both offering and centering is like this slowness and curiosity and presence and like throwing up all the goals and the agendas and all of that, right? Where you actually get to look at like what is happening, and it's like flipping the whole narrative on what horsemanship should be, right? It's not a goal focused, achievement based object, right? It's actually giving people a space to be curious, to be playful, to find joy, you know, for it to be okay to have a bad day, to, you know, to not know what to do next. Like all of those things I think are new and healing and welcoming, and the sense of community that you're creating and offering. All of that is to me really groundbreaking and so heartwarming. So yeah.
Thank you.
Sheesh. Thanks, Cara.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, final question. One word to describe the kind of horse person you aspire to be.
One word. It's hard to do one word, but
You can do 2 words.
okay. I think I do one. I think humble.
Man, yours are really good. So good. So good. Gosh, Cara, this has been a delight. I'm just so thankful for this conversation.
Oh, thank you as well. It's always an immense pleasure to chat with the two of you.
Likewise.
Cara, just as before we leave, I just want to take a moment to recognize some of the work you've done in the world, both for yourself and for your family and for society, that consciousness thing we're talking about. I see these different levels and layers to your life arc, and I just want to take a moment to recognize that. You know, you came out of a complex trauma situation that you survived and have thrived now from. You sought refuge, you created to deal with that were very effective and powerful, but you stayed curious and adaptive. You heed the call every time you've heard it to drop beyond the known and into the realm of the uncomfortable. And I'd like to just recognize too the impact that has had for your own family and your own children. As you know better than anybody, trauma patterns don't begin and end with an individual, and doing this work in a way that helps interrupt that and create a new paradigm for the next generation, I think is one of the most powerful ripple effects any of us can have, because we don't really ever know how far that's going to extend then beyond us. And you left the golden handcuffs so many people strive to get, and you still show up. You drove all the way up here to Oregon to engage in this inquiry with us. You sit and give so generously of your time for these podcasts. And I think this field that you're working in is very powerful, and it's going to have a great impact on the world. And I look forward to seeing you be a leader in that aspect in the somatic world and working with horses and people. So thank you for the work you do. And
that
please,
is a lot to take in, Josh.
Yeah.
Thank you. My heart is like, yeah. I am I'm slowing my brain down right now. There's a saying in the somatic world, a research in the somatic world, that it takes, like when we don't have a trauma history, it takes about 60 seconds to actually take in, you know, someone's appreciation or a compliment. You know, we can do our quick like rejection in the moment of like, oh, but if you have a trauma history, which most of us do on some level, it takes 90 seconds to just really like let it in. So thank you for the reflections.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's interesting with the 90 seconds.
Yeah, I'm learning so much.
Yeah.
And we see you, Cara. I guess that's the thing. We really see you. Yeah. And we're just so happy you exist in the world.
Oh, ditto. Same here.
Well, till next time.
Yeah, till next
Till
time.
next time.
We'll do another one. Maybe we'll dive deeper into a topic or something.
Yeah.
that'd be fun.
Okay. Okay. And we still got to figure out how to come visit you down in Marin.
Good
I
to
now
see
have
you
a
both.
Very good to see you.
I hope you enjoyed the show today. We'd love for you to join our free Substack community for The Herd is Calling. Connect with us, engage in thoughtful discussions, and access exclusive content. Click the link nearby to subscribe. It's so easy and totally free. We appreciate you listening, and as always, may the horse be with you.